Our next guest, Reed Hastings, is the co-founder and co-CEO of Netflix. He says the secret of their success is a smash the conventions culture, and he's written about it in a new book called No Rules Rules.
Thank you, Christian, and Reed, welcome to the show.
A real treat, Walter. Thank you.
You've just come out with a book called No Rules Rules. It's based on a slideshow you once did on a reinvention, how to create a culture of reinvention. Part of it is only having A players, as Steve Jobs would say. Explain that to me.
Well, the book is really about employee freedom. More than most companies, we try to create a climate where employees can make decisions, including impactful big decisions. And it's a whole system around how do you have great employee freedom, no rules, and not have chaos. Because the benefit is that you get great flexibility and adaptation. Now, you asked about how do you have great players, hiring A players. Everyone tries to hire A players. That's pretty consistent across many companies. What they don't do or do unevenly is let people go. And what we say is we're a team, like a professional sports team, not like a family. We want great players in every position because that's the only way we have a chance of winning the championship, of pleasing our members around the world with incredible entertainment.
You say that there should be no rules so that people can flourish, set their own rules, and do their things. What happens during a pandemic where people aren't coming into the office? Is that a problem?
It's worked as well as it can. It's not as good as being together in person, but our employees have sacrificed tremendously to do their work. It's been so hard for those who live alone or those who have young kids at home, and they've really leaned in. But like everyone, I can't wait till this COVID thing is done.
One of the things I've known about you that's probably not as well known is how you deeply study values. You love these seminars and ways of discussing values with people. To what extent have your values influenced the type of things you do, both in business and in the content you create?
Well, I think having a clear sense of your own values and your firm's values are really important. And with our employees, we've developed clarity around that about what we want to represent to consumers and what we don't. We're not in sports, even though sports is very enjoyable. We're not in video games, even though that's very enjoyable. We're not in news, even though that's very important. So we're really focused on series and films and trying to be the absolute best in the world at it, and then to grow to be able to entertain the whole world. That would be such an accomplishment.
And one of those things that you said at one point that you weren't into was that it wasn't your role to be telling truth to power. Was that a little bit of an overstatement, and have you rethought that?
Well, one version of truth to power is that's when you have real journalists, that sometimes go to jail, sometimes are killed. Journalism's a super serious business. So what we do is certainly there's truth in all entertainment, and there's aspects of truth to power, but I don't want to pretend that what we do is as dangerous or as important as journalism.
One of the rules that you have in your great new book involves humility, which is that you should never crow about any success you may have had. And you also, when you make mistakes, you should be upfront and talk about those. To what extent have you talked openly about certain mistakes you've made?
Within the company, we're very big on that, of sharing things that could be better, not for the purpose of humiliation or something negative, but from the sense of learning and growth. We learn the most when people give us feedback. And the funny thing is, even for me, with all this success, when someone gives me negative feedback, it still hurts. And then I try to remember, it's like doing crunches or push-ups, and I know those last ones hurt, but those are the ones that make you strong. And it's the same thing with feedback. And so I'm better now at just absorbing the feedback, feeling the pain still, but recognizing that's what makes me better.
You write in your book about your wonderful mother and the family you grew up in, but being in a household in which emotions weren't really discussed that much. And then you talk about your early marriage and being in couples training. To what extent does that inform the way you operate and the way you wrote these rules for Netflix?
Growing up, I was a typical, restrained family, or maybe that was just my orientation. And I write in the book that I learned a lot about honesty from our marriage counselor, which he really helped me see that I was systematically lying. I would say things like, family's the most important thing. And then I would stay at work late at night. And he helped me to see that this was, bad for me, and I should really learn to be very honest and self-reflective and self-aware. And that has helped tremendously in my marriage, and we just celebrated our 29th wedding anniversary. But surprisingly, it's also helped a lot at Netflix. And as a leader, I realize if I can set a good example of being honest and open and curious, then we'll attract people like that. And then the whole company can grow as we have from DVD by mail to streaming to original content.
You were a longtime board member at Facebook. You're friends with Sheryl Sandberg and to some extent Mark Zuckerberg. Do you ever talk to them about the values you adhere to and how Facebook might, in some ways, either intentionally or unintentionally, be undermining some of those values?
Well, Mark and Sheryl take their responsibilities very seriously, and they're definitely wrestling with the effects in society. And every new technology that's important, has downsides. And they and the society, Twitter, YouTube, all the user-generated TikTok, are wrestling with how do you mostly be for the good and mitigate the bad.
But the algorithms you build into, your system help people connect with the entertainment they like the most. The algorithms at a place like Facebook tend to reinforce and in times inflame or enrage people. Do you think it's not just a small problem, but a systemic flaw in the way some of these social media sites are built?
It's a challenge that they have, and really they're the ones you should probably ask about that, because we get the joy of just focusing on our members and sort of, in some sense, an easier problem, which is how do you give people great entertainment that they're going to rave about?
And how much do you worry about the amount of time, especially young people these days, are spending online, and how the algorithms for all types of online things tend to be addictive in a way?
When you think about the roots of television and the beginning of TV, people used to say in the 1960s, oh, TV is awful, it's going to wreck society. That didn't happen. Before that, it was rock and roll was going to wreck society. So I have a lot of confidence that youth will learn how to adapt and become digital natives, and all of these things will be channeled to the positive.
Reed, thanks so much for joining us.